We are back, and I've got David Gonyea with me tonight. We're doing something a little bit different since everything that's been going on across the country in multiple states with the mass shootings. I wanted to actually get an expert on to talk about things because I think, anyway, this is David Gonyea. Tell us your background.
Sean, thank you for having me on. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you. Like you said, my name is David. I was in the Marine Corps for 13 years until I had an injury, which ended my career. Throughout my time in the Marine Corps, I worked for the White House Military Office, various intelligence agencies within the Marine Corps, and the NSA, and so got to see the world and do some exciting things. But most importantly, throughout my career, I got to be around some really incredible individuals and had a lot of great opportunities to receive some exceptional training, especially in the world of firearms. That was a little bit unorthodox for your standard Marine career, and it had a lot to do with where I was and what I was doing and things like that. But it kind of led me to this path where after I got out of the Marine Corps, I spoke to my brother, who was also a Marine back in the 90s. And we'd always enjoyed firearms and really the training and education behind it. My father was an educator. He was a teacher and a medical professor. And we always liked teaching. So we decided to open up a business and teach firearms training, build firearms, and really serve our community in a unique capacity, so to speak.
And what's the name of the company?
Minuteman Ordnance Company is the name of our company.
And you do safety training and all that kind of stuff?
Correct. So we do own a gun store, and it is a retail space. Excuse me, my coffee's strong. But my brother likes to call it the candy shop that kind of gets people in the door, and then we kind of hook them on the training behind it, because we are in Northeast Texas, and guns are a part of Texas culture and the Southern culture, and realistically the American culture at large. But there's a huge lack of training and education in there. Most people get their information on firearms from Mel Gibson in the Lethal Weapon movies or in your various projects. I mean, seriously. I mean, and
no,
I see it on the range, because that's where a lot of people they get. I wouldn't say the fantasies, but when Dirty Harry came out, everybody wanted the Dirty Harry gun, right?
Yeah, they did. Absolutely.
And it's got when Desperado came out, Ruger sales for the P89 went through the roof. It's just the way that it goes, because I mean, sex sells, and when Antonio Banderas is holding something, people want it. So
I mean, my first firearm that I purchased was a Beretta 92F, because that was the weapon that Mel Gibson used. And
yeah, exactly.
I loved it. And then I sought out the Smith & Wesson, the 1935 Smith & Wesson that Harrison Ford used in Raiders of the Lost Ark. I had that for a while until I
awesome.
sold it. So I get it. I mean, I get it. That's how it works.
It's part of, being an American. So, I mean, it's the same thing with cars. I mean, one of my favorite cars is the Porsche Spyder, because of James Dean. The coolest freaking thing on the planet.
Okay.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing, so.
Well, I fired the AR-15 and on ranges, and I've got some questions. So yeah. And one thing I want to say is that I enjoy watching your videos when you train on your range that you have. You're probably one of the fastest people I've ever seen quick draw, in a self-defense situation. The way it's timed and all that is insane. Yes, I'm always excited to see your videos when you post. Because again, responsible gun owners can, but the training, you have to have the training.
That's
so
yes.
So what I wanted to ask was, there's a big misconception about the AR-15 as far as like just the name of it. Some people say it means assault rifle and all this. Can you explain what the AR stands for and why do people call it an assault rifle?
Right. I think the term assault rifle came about sometime. I'm not really sure, probably in the 80s or so. But the AR and AR-15 stands for Armalite rifle. Typically in designators, it includes the company's name in whatever the model designator is.
So if it's a SIG, it's a, you know, or if it's
yes,
a
the
Beretta,
SIG P320. Yeah.
Okay.
But especially when it comes to rifles, like when they, when the AK-47 is, you know, the Russian assault rifle for
the Kalashnikov,
right?
Rifle,
And that stands for Automatic Kalashnikova Model 47 is all it is. So
okay,
kind of how they designate what the model is.
Okay. So, but however that's been construed, they call it assault rifle, but it's really just the company's name.
Correct.
What's the difference between the AR-15, the M4, which is what the military uses, or the M16? You said you were trained on the M16 when you went into the military, for 13 years.
Correct.
What are the differences between those firearms? Because people say military style weapon. So like, is it a military style weapon, or is it really like what people say they shoot hogs with?
So that's one of those, I would say one of those hot button terms, right? A military style weapon. We have to remember that the AR-15 was designed over 60 years ago. It's actually getting phased out by the military right now. The Army is replacing it. The Marine Corps is working on replacing it with another rifle as well. So in the 1940s, the M1 Garand was a military style rifle. And it's now most people would consider that a hunting rifle today. And
that's the one that's just got the small 6-round cartridge in it with the wood. It's wooden. It's the ones you'd see the one on D-Day when they came in, or
exactly,
or what Roy Scheider used to shoot Jaws in that movie.
Exactly. I love the poster in the background, by the way. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, thanks. So he used that rifle, I guess, to kill Jaws,
which is an incredibly more powerful rifle than the M16. The biggest difference between an AR-15 and the M4/M16 is realistically the trigger mechanism. The trigger mechanism in the M16 and the M4 is a select fire system, which means it can be on safety, semi-automatic, or fully automatic, or burst in the older M16 styles.
So now when you say automatic or burst, I know when I shoot the AR-15 at the range, it's a semi-automatic, which means Correct. It's only as fast as you pull the trigger.
Correct.
And when I shoot in 3 round pulls, so it doesn't jam. 1, 2, 3, okay. Wait. 1, 2, 3, wait. So what's the difference between that and the M16 or M4?
So if you put the M16 or M4 in full auto, that means you hold the trigger down once and the firearm is going to continue to cycle and fire for as long as you hold the trigger.
Okay, so all right, yeah, okay, so that would run out of rounds fast. So that's
very
probably
quickly.
And but they don't, in the military, correct me if I'm wrong, they don't really want you to do that, right?
No, I mean, if you talk to like most Navy SEALs and things like that, if they're going in to say kill, capture Osama bin Laden, for instance, they're not going in there with machine guns and just spraying. You know, they're very selective with what they're shooting. And just like with the police, I mean, you're responsible for every single round that leaves the barrel of that gun. And so if you're shooting full auto, I mean, that really reduces your amount of accuracy and your accountability. So the only time full auto is doctrinally ever taught to be used in at least in the portion of my career is for suppressive fire, right? When you're in a conflict in firefight and you need to lay down a lot of firepower in order to
suppress the enemy so people could get away or move.
You can maneuver. Yes.
Okay. All right. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on red flag laws?
Well, that's a slippery slope. I mean, in a perfect world, you could say, okay, if someone has an issue, they shouldn't have guns. But when you put that in the hands of government, it can be, well, you put that in the hands of any other man, it can be easily abused. And so it makes me nervous because there's been no clear-cut definition of what that would mean. But if we looked at the Patriot Act and what we believe how that would be beneficial to us, it just led to average Americans losing a little bit more of their freedom. So I am concerned about it. It sounds good in theory, but like a lot of things, I'm just unsure about how that could be implemented safely to protect the rights of individuals. Because if you just leave red flag laws open-ended and you and I get in a disagreement and I call the police and I say, this man is mentally unstable, and the police come to your house and he shouldn't have guns and he has guns in the house, who knows what he's going to do? And then the police come to your house and say, hey, someone said you're mentally unstable. And you're like, what? Who would say that about me? And they're like, well, this guy's clearly a psycho. And they take all
because of the reaction, the visceral reaction you probably get from that.
So,
go ahead.
It's just, I don't know if that would solve any problems, because just, like this example in Uvalde, this kid had very few recognizable issues leading up to that instance. Could they have red flagged him? I'm not sure. I mean, you never know what's going to set somebody off. And, well, let's just put it this way. The movie, The Minority Report.
Oh, okay. It's the government arresting somebody before something happens and then charging him with it, even if it doesn't happen. I see what you mean by slippery.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I hate to bring Tom Cruise into it, but I'm not saying that's what would happen in red flag laws, but I'm just very unsure. It could very well lead to something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I understand. And again, a lot of times in domestic disputes, you don't know if the husband or the wife, calls on someone else just because out of spite, and then it almost, you hear about online gamers that get swatted, where someone will just call the cops and say, this guy's holding someone hostage. SWAT team comes in and they kill a guy based on just a tip that they get. And that's a true thing. And people have been killed for that. So one of the other questions I had was, and I'll go into my thoughts on it after some things that I've read, is, the banning of manufacturing high capacity magazines. I know on my Beretta 92F, I think I had a 14 round or is it 12 round in one of the hole, or 13 in one of the hole? I think is what I had, which was an expanded clip, in order to have that many rounds in there. But one of the things that I read an article about the fact that, they say we have, 3 firearms for every man, woman, and child in this country. So if you got 330 million people, you got 1 billion firearms. And with that, all of these weapons, whether they're handguns and if they're not the barrel, old school, they all have magazines. And I've got friends that have, I've got a friend of mine who's a former prison guard. He works in the film industry. He has like an arsenal, but his wife is also a detective with the sheriff's department, and they have like a ton. I mean, I'm talking, they got 10,000 rounds stored at their house, but he also has 28 acres, and he hunts, and he's always cooking up deer burger and all this kind of stuff. And like someone like that, who may have 10 clips for one of his AR-15s, he's got probably a dozen rifles. The thing that, so the multiply factor of all these clips that are already out there is probably 2 or 3 billion clips just in the United States.
Probably more than that, honestly.
Right. And if they stop the manufacturing of them tomorrow, in order for those to kind of fall out of service because of bad springs or they just get damaged over time, the article I read said it would take 75 to 100 years to phase out high capacity magazines. So like, even if you pass that law tomorrow, it wouldn't affect anyone. It would affect my great grandkids, but it wouldn't affect me or my child now and protect us.
Right.
And so like, I'm
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm just saying that's how complex. When it's easy to just get up there and go ban high capacity magazines, because these guys and we all know the mass shooters, you know, they probably have 5 of them on them or 3, and
Right.
they're fully packed and they can swap them out quick, and we get it. But it's like, even if you stop the manufacture of them tomorrow, you got 3 billion of them all over the country.
Here's the other problem with it. You know, the government tried this in the 20s with prohibition, but it didn't stop anybody from drinking.
It didn't stop it.
Or manufacturing alcohol. You know, all it did was create a whole new form of organized crime. And
so you're going to have black markets that are going to be.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, especially with manufacturing technology today. I mean, you can have a CNC machine that's the size of a microwave. You can have a 3D printer make all of this stuff that's the size of a microwave. I mean, people have these in their homes right now. I mean, how are you going to stop that?
So, I mean, it sounds good on paper, you know, when they talk about it, but it doesn't seem like it's got any bite to it.
No.
All right. So I know you wanted to talk about this. I know when the Parkland shooting went down, you know, a lot of those kids went to their legislators and just went nuts on them, and and fair enough. I mean, they watched their friends get slaughtered, and they were able to raise the age to buy a rifle. It doesn't matter what kind of rifle, from 18 to 21, just like the handguns. And of course, there's the 10-day waiting period for handguns. And you look at the, you know, the kid in Uvalde, he, you know, turns 18, buys 2 AR style weapons, and then 2 days later he kills everybody. So it's like, so my question is, raising the age, they did it in Florida. They've already done it in Florida. So that's 1 state out of 50 states. They raised it to 21. And, you know, what do you think about raising the age from 18 to 21?
So here's my problem with that. You know, I joined the Marine Corps when I was 18. Yesterday was the anniversary of D-Day, right?
Yep.
And it was actually the anniversary of me joining the Marine Corps too, which is pretty cool. But the biggest problem I have with that is, I mean, let's go back to D-Day specifically. I mean, there are kids that were 17 years old, 16 years old on those boats storming those beaches, and they were handed an assault rifle and told to do that. They were drafted. That wasn't a volunteer thing. There were 18-year-olds that were drafted and sent to war and handed that gun. And they were,
and I went, 9,000 died in 1 day.
Yes. And they were entrusted to be responsible for that firearm, and then die with that firearm in their hand by orders of their government. You and I, when we turned 18, we had to register for the Selective Service. So if you're going to then define who is an adult, who is an actual citizen, who can or cannot purchase these rifles, then you're going to have to then say, well, these people should not be eligible for the draft because they are not adults.
I think that's fair. I mean, if that's the direction they're going to go. It's kind of what it'll do is it'll unwind all this precedent that's been set for the military for decades and decades and decades.
Yeah, for over 100 years.
And you're gonna lose people that would have joined the military.
Right. I mean, I joined voluntarily at 18. So that's again a slippery slope. Is that the answer? Are 18-year-olds not responsible enough to carry a firearm? I don't know. I knew some really incredible 18-year-old men that served their country in Fallujah that I completely trusted with my life. Later on down the road, I joined a little bit after Fallujah, but I had 18-year-old kids that worked for me throughout my career that carried rifles with loaded in the chamber, and I trusted them. There were 18-year-old, when I was working for the White House at HMX1, there were 18, 19-year-old kids that had loaded pistols and were within touching distance of the President of the United States. They were trusted to do that. And they weren't even old enough at that time. They were not even old enough to purchase as a civilian those pistols that they were carrying.
I know. I always feel that, you know, that's one of those things that it slightly go off topic, but like just recently they passed a thing for the military where like they take 18-year-olds and they throw them in deuce and a halves, and they're driving tractor trailers, but then when they come out, they don't have a CDL.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute, like that is a thing that they earned.
Yeah.
They can you know, drive these things all over all over the earth for the government. But then when they get out, you know, they got to go to truck driving school and then get a CDL. It's like, but I think they fixed that law in order to help people.
There are some. The only one that really still bothers me is for medics and Navy corpsmen. Those guys go through such incredible training, and they're literally saving lives on the battlefield, and they come out with almost nothing.
Nothing that they can go straight to EMT and be like, here's my certificate.
It's awful. Not even EMT. And these guys are doing a lot of times more so than, I mean, on the battlefield, they're doing things that ER surgeons aren't even doing, you know?
Yeah, it's insane. There's some things they've got problems, and I can't imagine why they haven't solved those yet. But I actually think they might have solved the CDL thing, but I could be wrong. All right. So when I bought my Beretta 92F, I had in North Carolina. See, that's the other thing. Like every state has different rules. Okay. And I get that because they want to leave those decisions up to the state, but should everybody follow the same rule? I mean, because I had to buy a purchasing permit. They cost $5. The limit is 3. You have to go to the sheriff's department, fill out the paperwork. Then they do a background check on you. Take the purchasing permit, you go to the gun store, you give them the purchasing permit, you tell them the gun that you want. They run the background check. The purchasing permit stays with that shop. But I saw when I went to pick up my purchasing permits, it took 3 weeks for the sheriff's department to get my permits. For me to even go, then I had to wait the 10 days for the background check. They do a background check, the sheriff's department, then the gun store sends it up, whatever the chain of command is. When I was there, they showed me, the sheriff's department, my background check. It was like this thick. I kid you not. And I said, can I see it? And they said, no. I was like, I just want to see what's in it. I mean, I have no criminal record or anything like that, but I wanted to see, like, how are they reaching out? Who are they talking to? The thing was this thick of paper bound. And I'm going, all right, so I don't have that information. You have that information. I don't have, I guess they're pulling credit reports. They're doing all sorts of stuff.
Yes.
DMV rec, all these things. I can't look at it, but it's about me and that I'm trying to do it. And I get it. There's laws, disclosure, but you'd think the person that's getting it could get the disclosure. So
how it works for me in a gun store is no matter who comes in here, I have to run a federal background check.
And you're in Texas.
Correct.
Yeah,
and
where
that's nationwide.
That's nationwide.
You have to run a federal background check unless in the state of Texas someone has a license to carry, because as long as they're in possession of that and that license to carry is valid, they already have that criminal background check done. So that's the only way you can get away from not getting the background check in the state of Texas. And I believe that's depending on the state, pretty standard, and that's approved by the FBI. The background check that I submit goes directly to the FBI.
Okay.
And they're the ones that conduct the background check.
So, but is that for handguns or is that for rifles?
That's for any firearm.
So that's done. So, all right. So
rifle,
this kid,
shotgun.
So this kid that went and got the AR-15s in Texas,
he had to do that.
He had to do that. So the FBI ran a background check on him. I guess they didn't find anything because he's 18 and he didn't have a record.
Yeah.
Jesus.
I
mean, how do you fix that? I don't know. I don't know. Should there be a 10-day wait? Is there a 10-day wait in Texas for handguns too? No.
There's no 10-day wait.
See, North Carolina, we've got the 10-day.
Yep.
You
got purchased some guns in North Carolina when I was stationed there.
Okay. So do you think a 10-day waiting period would work only if, and the reason I say this is like the guy that went in I think it was Chattanooga, and he went and killed his doctor, killed a receptionist, a nurse, and then somebody waiting in the waiting room to get their back looked at. I mean, I can't, like, dude, if you were going to kill the doctor, I get that. But the receptionist and the person waiting to see the doc, I mean, it didn't make any sense, but people at that point, they've lost it. But my thing is, if he'd have had to wait 10 days after he purchased it, maybe he would have cooled off. Maybe he would have thought it through a little bit better.
I'll play devil's advocate on that. Maybe he would have planned that attack out to become even more successful on it and gotten away.
Kind of like, Kind of like the guy in Vegas that, you know,
I mean,
shot 500 people.
That's why I'm not sure if the 10-day waiting period can work, because that can go either way. If I'm mad enough to want to kill somebody and I get more time, I mean,
it'll fester. So
that could fester. I mean, you don't know. I mean,
well, we don't know.
In that psyche, when somebody's already at the point where they want to kill somebody, especially in that case, when he's having crippling back pain, his back pain is not going to get better anytime soon. It's going to get worse.
Yeah.
And he's just going to get more mad. I mean, he could have, brought explosives into that. He could have blown the whole hospital up. He could have done what Timothy McVeigh did. I mean, you just don't know. I mean, here's the problem. It's really easy to put the blame on guns because that's an easy way out. If we get rid of guns, these people can't hurt anybody. I believe it was in 1906, the biggest mass killing in a school was done with dynamite. I think 600 people were killed instantly with dynamite. Like Oklahoma City bombing, no guns were used. It blew up the whole federal building. I mean, when you have, and we learned this when we invaded Iraq. When you have a determined individual, they will go to great lengths, even when they are superiorly outnumbered and outclassed. They will go to great lengths to do harm.
Just like and you're referring to like IUD, like the improvised.
I mean, we have the grandest military in the world, and there was a point when we were in Iraq where we were realistically losing that war because of improvised explosive devices and fighting an insurgency. And what's to say, just like with, and the problem is too, when we're talking about Americans are very resourceful.
Way more resourceful than somebody in Iraq. That's
right. I mean, just look at our prison system. How are they getting pretty deadly weapons in our prison system? How are they getting drugs in our prison system? In fact, cartels, the majority of cartel operations are ran from within our prisons. So it's a huge problem. And banning things and trying to make things illegal isn't going to work. Look at our war on drugs.
I mean, that's been an utter failure for decades and decades and decades and decades.
If we want to look at this organically and say, how do we solve this problem? I know we're getting off the rails here, of course, but it's not going to come from creating more laws. It's going to come from citizens standing up for ourselves, increasing our own individual responsibilities as citizens, and raising a better community. It starts from the community.
I know. And that kind of gets to a little bit of what I wanted to talk about a little bit down the road there. But how do you feel about ghost guns? What do you think about those? And when we talk about that, I actually I know someone who has a CNC machine and he does the bodies, the frames.
Yeah.
How do you fix that?
What do you think about moonshine?
Yeah, but moonshine usually hurts the individual, right? Because they're drinking it or they're selling it to their
What if they're giving it to kids?
Well, yeah, but I feel
let me ask you this, Sean. When you were in high school, did you drink?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Criminal.
Yeah.
I mean, what's stopping people? Even if making ghost guns illegal isn't going to stop people from doing it. The technology's there. Making a firearm really isn't that difficult. Case in point, there's an interesting study. California does a lot of gun buybacks, right? It's a total amnesty program. You bring us a gun and we will give you X number of dollars. And there was an individual that took that and he made a firearm out of a 2x4 and some tubing, a functioning firearm. He spent all of 47 cents to do it and took it to one of those gun buybacks and got a $250 check from the government that our taxpayers' dollars supplied.
Look, that's California's taxpayers. Not, I don't know if that's us.
Well, who knows? They might have gotten a federal grant for that.
Oh, true. You're probably right. Okay. I want to get into the socioeconomics in just a second, but I did want to talk about we had just over the past weekend, there were 17, you know, because anything over 3 people getting shot is considered a mass shooting. There were 17 since I reached out to you and said, hey, do you want to do this thing on my channel? And, you know, some of it was gang violence. Some of it was, you know, drive-by shootings and stuff like that. And I think about Chicago because, you know, they always talk about South Chicago is always, you know, it's every other day someone's getting shot in South Chicago.
Multiple times a day, really.
Multiple times a day.
Chicago, St. Louis. I lived in Washington, D.C. I was on a secured facility in Washington, D.C. We're just on the other side of the river. And we'd walk outside and we'd see bullets literally sitting on the pavement. And
yeah, I mean, obviously the bigger cities are going to have a lot of those problems. And, you know, one of the things that I pointed out, you know, is, you know, a lot of people don't know geography. And, you know, I know they point a lot of fingers at Chicago and this, that, and the other, but Chicago's only 20 minutes from Indiana, the state of Indiana, the border. And a lot of people will send or pay someone in a lot of those gangs. They'll pay somebody in Indiana to be a straw man, buy some firearms, and then hand them to these guys to go back 20 minutes up the road to Chicago.
Which is a huge federal crime, you know, and that's, you know, I'm part of the federal forms. Everybody who legally purchases a firearm from a gun store, part of these federal forms is about straw man purchases and ensuring that you are the legal purchaser. You are the individual purchasing this gun, and it is not a straw purchase. That's a legal form.
Because every single one of these forms that are filled out have the serial numbers for whether it's a rifle or whether it's, they have, so like, and that's the other thing. I know that there's this thing that went around years ago where they were talking about, you know, oh, they're going to form a database and they'll come get your gun. And I'm going, dude, you already fill out the paperwork with this. So they have it all. Like, I don't understand that with the database thing, but it's a fear thing.
I can get into that a little bit if you want to. On how that works. It's not quite the database that you think it is, and it's definitely not what other people think it is too. So say you come into my store and you fill out that paperwork, okay. I have to maintain that paperwork on file
forever, right?
Forever, literally forever. That has to stay with me. That serial number does not, and your personal identifiable information, aside from the background check, which just has basic data, this person is purchasing a pistol or rifle, that sort of thing, and your personal information, that stays with me. The only time that I release that to the federal government is if a trace is being ran. So if that gun is found to have been used in the commission of a crime, they run a trace, and it starts from the manufacturer. And the manufacturer says, okay, we made this gun and we sent it here. And then that person says, okay, I sent it here. And that traces all the way to me, who I then say, I sold it to Sean, and whatever happened after that.
So I mean, so technically, if people are being straw man and crossing borders, you know, they're breaking federal law.
Yeah.
But they seem to be doing it. I know a lot of guns are stolen, but you know, from people's households,
so
they break in.
Either if it was a straw purchase or if it was a stolen gun. I mean, it's still, you know, an unlawful possession of that firearm based on federal and state laws. How do you stop that? How do you stop people from committing crimes? You know, that's the problem. And you notice, and I believe in, I get ahead. My brain works really fast. So I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
You know, talking about the gun-related crime rate, the gun death rate increasing rapidly. I mean, the crime rate in 2020 was it's probably the worst since the 80s in most cases, like things like that.
And they think a lot of that had to do with the pandemic and lockdowns and all that.
Well, so we've got the pandemic, right? We had the riots, which led to the defund the police movement.
Right.
And if you look statistically across the board, especially in major metropolitan areas, police forces, I mean, they lost like 30% of their manpower. People just left. I have friends in the law enforcement community that left. They walked away. Yeah. So now we've got, in some cases, 50% fewer law enforcement officers on the streets. If you're a criminal, what are you going to do if there's less law enforcement? Probably do more crime. Yeah. So it's a really bad situation, and I wish someone could have gotten ahead of the defund the police movement and flip the narrative. maybe we should increase the funding, right? Increase the training, increase the resources. Because, like, think about this. You look at Navy SEALs, right? Before they go on mission, they prepare for that mission for months.
Months and months and months. Yeah.
They go and deploy, right? They deploy for, say, 6 months. They come back and train for a year. Meanwhile, our cops are working.
6 months is basic law enforcement for a cop.
Yeah, they go to the academy for 6 months. They come back, and then they go right into a patrol car, right? They get a little bit of on-the-job training.
Yeah.
And then they're on the streets by themselves. Meanwhile, they're working 12-hour shifts.
Yep.
Plus overtime all week long. Some of them are putting 80 hours a week in. They're tired and overworked and not getting that time to go and train and prepare and learn.
You know, when you look at a lot of states, they don't pay them enough. You know, I just, you know, if you're not going to pay for quality people or people that are, you know, they're gonna leave.
Right. And if your manpower is so low, I mean, you're going to grab whoever you can. You just need bodies to fill seats at that point, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you're going to get unqualified people that are going to do dumb shit.
And that's the problem. What we should do is look at it the other way, right? We should.
When you look at all of the stuff that they have been doing for decades now, where they are able to buy military, you know, RVs with and you know, kind of like
going in the wrong place, and a lot of times, because I've witnessed it in my own eyes, they get all this great equipment, have no idea how to use it effectively, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a problem.
Rather than getting the cool gear, rather getting effective things for what you need. You know, I'm all in support of having life-saving equipment and things that will preserve life, both on the law enforcement officer side and, you know, the suspect side, right? Okay. But the training should be the standard. You increase your manpower to where you have people on rotation, to where people are on rotation working for a month, and then they're off in a training rotation for a month. And that will allow them to decompress, right? Because these guys don't have time to even decompress. They get
I got a friend of mine who's a sheriff, and he was telling me that he's, you know, going to bow out after 5 years, because he said he just sees things like, you know, he'll show up to a car accident and someone's head's scattered all over the highway and he said he just like he sees, told me, he said, Sean, he's like, I see things and I don't want to see them anymore.
Think about that. Like, so he responds to that, right? Where he sees a gruesome death on the highway.
Yeah.
And then you're going, you know, 15 miles over the speed limit, and he pulls you over. And I'm not saying you specifically, but just as an example.
Sure.
And you're all pissed off at him and reading him the riot act for pulling you over and everything else like that.
He's seen somebody's brains all over the place. He just had
like literally the worst experience of his life 10 minutes before that.
Yeah.
You know, so
I understand. You know, I get that.
It's the hardest job in America right now, unfortunately. And, you know, when we were kids, when you remember when the DARE cop would come to school and everybody loved the policeman. Now everybody's taught to hate the policeman. So it's a completely thankless job. Yeah. And I'm not saying, and I'm by no means supporting any individual, whether they be a law enforcement officer or anybody who does the wrong thing. Right.
I mean, there's always going to be bad apples in the bunch, but you know, it is a responsibility of all the other good apples to kick the bad apple out and turn, you know, and that's something I don't think happens a lot. There's that, you know,
there's corruption in every form.
I mean, I mean, it's
look at the Harvey Weinstein situation and everything else that happens in any organization where people are getting money. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get that. It's you hope that they self-police themselves as best that they can. And this is where I wanted to get into socioeconomics of this. A lot of parents are working 2 jobs. A lot of parents are struggling. Like the shooter in Texas, he lived with his grandparents. I think his parents, I could be wrong, but I think I read that they were farm workers and they weren't around or something like that.
Yeah, I think his parents were split.
Okay, his parents were split.
Which, if you look at most troubled youths come from broken homes.
Okay,
and so this is really difficult too, because I'm divorced, you know, and I have a son. But parenting, it always comes down to how the society that we're around, the environment that we're around kind of dictates and molds us, right? And
sure.
I'm by no means a psychologist, but
yeah, I'm not
being
obviously
in a broken home and that sort of environment is difficult. My mother died when I was young, and my father worked, and it was difficult and it was challenging, but you know, he still did the best that he could to ensure that we were both myself and my two older brothers taught to do the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, and that, I think that kind of stuff is it's obviously not there for a lot of people, but then again, like, you know, in Texas, what's the population in Texas?
28 million, 29 million.
28 million, and you got this one kid that did this. You know, so it's like everything's relative, even though it sounds crazy to put it.
Well, you say this, right? There's a billion guns in America right now.
But only 2 of them did damage in Texas against.
Right. So I mean, if we're looking at percentages,
yeah,
it's such a drop in the bucket. 400 million people, and I'm not.
No, we don't. We're not trying to.
Situation. I spoke at multiple different schools this last week talking about how they could better prepare themselves, and we'll get into more of that in a second. But the biggest thing is, regardless of what it is, what is happening, there are always going to be bad people out there. It's just the nature of the game.
I mean, the grandfather said he didn't know he bought the guns, you know. And so obviously if
there's a lot of questions with that.
My grandparents could barely use their phones, you know, and so it's like, how do you expect them to even know he's on Twitch or he's doing this or he's on it, putting out a phone, like, and so then it becomes like, why are so many, it's so funny. It's like, you always hear people after a mass shooting go, well, we always knew he was weird, and he said things, but we didn't think he'd actually do it. And it's like, dude, like, if you hear somebody say some shit,
see something,
you have to, right. And in the state of North Carolina, once they implemented the see something, say something, this past year, they had 249 reports of people calling in, see something, say something. Now, whether that led to anything, I'm sure they followed up and did 249. So that whole thing is kind of working, but obviously people are still slipping through the cracks. But
that's because our law enforcement agencies are so undermanned. Think about this. In 2000, I was talking to a Dallas police officer, and this was in 2009, I believe. When he would go on shift, when he'd click on in service, he said he had 54 pending calls.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. That's 54 crazy.
Pending when you click on shift. If you think each call takes at a minimum 30 minutes, how long are you working?
Yeah.
It's impossible, right?
And
that
so,
was in 2009. Now we reduced manpower by 30, 40, 50% in some of these cities.
Yeah. And so, you know, what can, I mean, obviously, like Matthew McConaughey, he did his thing at the White House today and he spoke for 24 minutes. One of the things he talked about was the family unit. Like, people have to get involved, you know, and pay attention to what their kids are doing. But it's like, when some people are working 2 jobs, 40, you know, it's like, you should be able to work 40 hours a week and make a decent living to keep the bills, you know, but you can't in this country. And so, like, it becomes this other issue. Like, if the mother was more involved, well, the mother's working 2 jobs, or you know, it's like,
you know, in a lot of these things, you got to question, and I'll put this on men, you know, where is the father? You know, what is going on there? What is going on in the actual family unit? Because it has to be a unit. I mean, you're putting it all on the mother. Yeah, the mother has to work 2 jobs because, you know, she got pregnant and dad ran out, you know?
Yeah. But then you remember the one kid that brought the gun to school, and then he had it in his book bag, and then he wind up shooting. And then now the parents are both on trial because like, so you had 2 of them, you had a mother and a father, and they were both laughing in text going, you know, don't get caught if you're going to do something like that. It's
like ridiculous.
So where did these people come from? You know, like,
again, I mean, that is, you know, there are millions of, parents in the United States right now. One of them does something incredibly stupid and should be punished for that. But that's not putting the onus on every single parent out there.
No, I know, but we still, there's not a year that goes by that there's not a mother that locks a kid in a fucking car in a hot summer and their brains boil and they die.
Yeah.
So like
for a rational person, how does
it's 2022. How do you leave a kid locked in a car? Oh, I forgot the kid was in there. I had to go in and work my shift.
So that's the problem. Well, I don't even think it's working the jobs, because it's not that they're going in to work their jobs. They're going to get their nails done and everything else like that.
Well, there was one where this woman went in. She worked at a daycare with kids and left her own kid in the car.
That's outrageous.
And it's just like, yeah, I mean, it's not just.
I think the problem with society right now is we're so inwardly focused and focused on ourselves as individuals so much, and no longer focused on community. And
so let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm. We're so detached from each other nowadays. I mean,
it's true. And
with as easy it is for you and I to connect, right? I mean, you live in North Carolina. I haven't lived in North Carolina since 2012.
Yeah.
And we've been able to communicate ever since then, via Facebook and social media and everything else like that. But we're so disconnected to what's tangible, like right next to us, because everybody is so focused on, the social media aspect of society, that most people don't even know their neighbors.
No, it's true. It's true.
I remember when I was a kid, we had neighbors move into the property nearby us, and they knocked on the door and gave us peach cobbler.
Yeah, no, that shit doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, that's not happening anymore.
No, it doesn't. Everyone's in their own.
Maybe that's also the problem, right?
Yeah. No, I get it. So my next question was: should firearm owners have liability insurance in case someone takes their gun, commits a mass murder, or what? I think was the Parkland kid. Didn't he get the rifles from his parents' lockup? I might be mistaken.
I can't remember.
Yeah, there's been so many. What the fuck? I mean, but some of them, so liability insurance, you're a dealer. Like, how would that work? And would that make people put gun locks on, put it in a safe, make sure people don't get a hold of it?
Well,
report it. If it's some people, their firearm will get stolen. They don't even report it to the cops that it got stolen.
Yeah, that's a big problem too. But here's the thing. There are plenty of people out on the road right now without liability insurance on their motor vehicles.
But I think I would counter that most people have car insurance.
Well, most people that have guns aren't committing crimes with it.
Okay, fair enough. We're
talking 99.9% of gun owners are not committing crimes with their guns.
Right.
So,
do you think?
I mean, yeah, make people get more insurance, but that's not going to. I don't think that's going to. All that's going to do is make insurance companies even more rich.
True. Now, do you think gun manufacturers should be immune from lawsuits? And then the only reason why I say that is because, it's been discussed, and that, every other industry, whether it's, a doctor cuts off the wrong leg, or, you could go after Firestone for the tires being defective.
The wrong leg. The scalpel didn't cut off anybody's leg unintentionally. That's the difference. The scalpel manufacturer is not liable for that. Now, here's the next thing. If you were to get in a car and crash and kill somebody, is the car manufacturer, even if you did it intentionally, is the car manufacturer liable for that?
No, I guess, but they're liable if there's recalls and something like your car.
Right, if it's a safety issue, right?
Like the Firestone tire thing.
Firearms, if a firearm is rendered unsafe by something the manufacturer did, they are liable for that, just like with an automobile. But if I make a car and you get in it and you do something irresponsible, I'm not liable for that. Why should I, as a gun manufacturer, be liable for an individual's actions?
Because I think the thought process behind it is, if enough of them get sued, they'll do things better. Like, the IDs when you grab the gun, it's the fingerprint things. I know, I noticed.
It was cool on Judge Dredd, but that, I mean, again, I mean,
look, if they can put
that technology's not there yet.
But if they can put it on a cell phone that I can, like my Pixel phone, I have the fingerprint ID on the back. I hit the button with my finger. I can do 2 fingers. I registered 2 fingers. Could they add that to these things? But then again, in lies the question. If you get a kid that's 18 who can legally buy it, he buys it, and then he registers his fingerprint on the gun, but then he decides to go out and kill people.
Yeah, I know people that have DUIs to where they have to blow into a machine in their car to start it.
Yeah.
And they're paying their friend that's not drinking to blow in their machine, and they're still driving drunk.
It comes down to
Do you hold the breathalyzer company liable for that?
Do you think trigger locks work?
No.
Yeah. People will get them sometimes when they buy a gun.
Actually, it's federal law that you are required to be given one when you purchase.
Right. And then most people never put it on. Right.
No.
Because they say if there's ever an intruder, they'll fumble with it. And,
absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things that I teach. Time is life when you're in a life-threatening situation. Yeah, and when you're in a life-threatening situation, and especially if you've never been in one before, and even if you have, it's the worst moment of your life. And
the adrenaline alone. Yeah. Oh, sorry about that. That was my computer. The adrenaline alone,
when you watch the horror movies, right, where the girl's getting chased by the scary guy, and she goes to put her keys in the car, and what happens every single time?
She can't get them in because she's panicking or drops the keys.
You do that a million times, thoughtlessly, but when you're stressed out, it's impossible to do.
Okay, so all right, so trigger locks. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about HIPAA laws, public schools, therapists, and law enforcement. Because of HIPAA laws, like the school system doesn't communicate because HIPAA law, if someone sees a therapist, I mean, that's one of the things that, like, for everyone's privacy, they're not communicating, because you'll hear things where, well, law enforcement was told 2 months ago about this kid who said he was going to, kill everyone in school, right, but somehow it didn't trickle down to the right thing or the paperwork, or like you said, it comes down to there's not enough staff to handle cases.
I would assume that's what happens, because in almost every one of these cases, I mean, I've heard some of these mass shooters, they were reported to the FBI.
Yeah. Yeah, and they just didn't,
because
I had somebody the other day on Facebook was talking about the IRS, and she was on hold for 3 hours on the IRS trying to get in because they were auditing her.
Yeah.
And I had seen that, they have continuously cut the budget of the IRS. They get 1,500 phone calls every 2 seconds at the IRS. Mm-hmm. That's something like 55 million phone calls a year, and they only have 15,000 employees answering the phones. So it's like, there's no way you're going to get into the IRS. So when you're cutting and again, and this goes down to the school systems, we talked about, the SRO officers they spend $750 million a year in grants to have SRO officers at these schools. And then the last couple of, with Parkland and then this one, these guys are flaking out. They're not even rushing in. The one guy in Parkland was like a month away from retirement. Yeah. And so he didn't go in.
Yeah.
He chickened out. And a lot of these guys are out of shape. They know they're close to retirement. They're not like coming right out of the academy and going, you know what? It's like, it's a school. It's a pie job. I just walk down the hallways.
Yeah,
I'm threatening to them a little bit because they're like, oh, it's a cop. So it keeps
and then the teachers are kind of using them as like the secondary principal. Like, don't make me sick the SRO officer on you. But let's flip it. Where are these these school shootings not happening? In inner city schools, right, where the security is extreme in these inner city schools, and they take it seriously because there is gang violence there. There are problems. Those schools are actively trying to clean up these huge issues that inner city schools have, and they take their lockdown seriously.
And they actually don't have the problems as some of the I would say like the upper middle class, Parkland or the impoverished Uvalde. The population 20,000.
Yeah,
there's no one there.
Well, Uvalde, that kid went through an unsecured door. right? The
Yeah.
problem is people get lax and they get this false sense of security. And that's a big problem in especially America today. And I don't know if it's because we're underexposed to what humanity really is, which is a horrible, violent, terrible creature. It's raw, primal state.
Yeah.
And we don't see that in our day-to-day life because it's not what's glamorous on TikTok or Instagram. But that's what humans are at our base, is we are violent animals. And I unfortunately had the not so distinct privilege of seeing that firsthand of how terrible people can be. And every once in a while that evil rears its head in the United States of America in these small towns, and people aren't prepared for it. And that's a big thing about what we teach. You know, we're not doomsdayers or gloomy, like doom and gloom people. But at the end of the day, in that terrible moment, no one's going to come to save you. I think we've gotten so comfortable in the 911 society where we just call the police when we only got 9 McNuggets instead of 10.
Oh, dude, don't even get me started on that.
You know, that we just call the cops for everything, and we don't handle problems ourselves rationally and appropriately.
Well, on that one, you know, Uvalde, the sheriff's department, just 6 months ago was posing in photos. It was on their Facebook page where they had gotten a grant and gotten full body armor, and they were all dressed up tactically and all. And then none of those assholes showed up when the shit hit the fan. Like, they didn't show up until it was already too late. And there was, you know, you saw the school teacher on Good Morning America. You saw that today, right? And hearing him, they were yelling, please, you know, and the kids were calling 911 while they were getting shot.
Yeah, while they were holding outside. And it's a major breakdown. And just in human psychology too, a profound moment that it almost brings tears to my eyes every time I think about it, and the fortitude that this individual showed. Christian Craighead, I encourage you to look him up. He was in Nairobi during the hostage crisis at the hotel complex there, where 170 hostages were taken. And same thing, police, military police, everybody was out there holding and standing by. Christian Craighead, he was a British SAS, Special Operations soldier with the British Army. And he was there as an instructor and an advisor to the Kenyan government. And he was there, and he said, send me. And then he went in there and single-handedly led to the rescue of everybody in that building. And there was multiple times where he was going in and out, completely by himself, alone and unafraid, into the fray.
But those guys are so rare.
They shouldn't be, though. I think manhood in society has been destroyed in a lot of cases. And I think it's really important, man and womanhood, in the sense of strength and being strong and being responsible and being that protector. And I get onto women a lot in my classes too, because they always defer their security to the man in their life, typically, or to somebody else. They get deferred to their husband or their dad or something like that. But the problem is, when a bad person is going to come and take advantage of a woman, they're not going to do it when their husband's standing right next to them. They're going to do it when that woman is alone.
Right. Absolutely. So she has to be able to protect herself.
Exactly. And that's what men have to be able to do is to be able to step up when they see something wrong happening or something bad happening. They have to move towards that violence. Not
one of the things I noticed recently, there was a fight at the beach, Carolina Beach, where I'm at, and it went viral, right?
Yeah.
But nobody really was trying to jump in, and there was these little
there was
two little kids. They were like 6 years old. They were the kids of the parent getting beat up, and they didn't do. And it's just kind of like people are quick to pull their phone out and film it because they feel they need to document it because they're scared to step in. Because
that sort of thing happens on the New York City subway every single day.
Oh, where someone will get shoved right onto the tracks or punched in the face, and they think they're going to go off on the tracks.
And people are filming it for more likes and retweets.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're not going to solve the world's problems tonight. No. So let's see, where are we at? Ammunition. I know this was probably one of those questions you read and were like, boom. should there be a tax on ammunition? If you can't, if you're not going to get rid of any of the things, can you make it to where kids, 18-year-olds or whatever, I know they have expendable income because most of them don't have jobs and they get allowance or whatever. You know, they can spend $75 on a video game. They can buy plenty of ammunition. Should there be a tax on ammo since it's not protected by the Second Amendment? The firing, the gun is protected, but the ammunition's not protected.
I would disagree with that. And let's go back to 1775 really quick.
Okay.
How Lexington started was that the British government found out that they were storing arms and ammunition in Lexington, and they marched the British Army down the street. And you know, that the use of that powder and those rifles combined was how we were able to stop the greatest government, the greatest military on the face of the earth. That is the foundation of the Second Amendment, is to be able for the American citizen to defend themselves, and to take ammunition out of that
makes it just a paperweight.
Yeah. There are those great quotes of talking about how the Japanese government was fearful of invading the mainland United States because they knew that every single American citizen had a shotgun and it'd be impossible to conquer the United States of America.
Yeah, and I think that's why I think a lot of people fail to realize why we haven't had a land war in our own country is because, well, one, you know, we've got the largest Navy. I mean, the satellites. I mean, the chance of somebody like getting across the ocean, you know, in great numbers like they did in World War II, like we did on D-Day, is not realistic in the world we live in now. At least that's what,
until tactical nuclear weapons annihilate super carriers,
right? Or you have a submarine that can shoot a nuke. Yeah, I get it. But the land war thing, we don't get attacked in massive numbers because we're unarmed citizens. And I mean,
let's look at Ukraine right now. What did they have to do?
They dearmed. They had to dearm and get rid of their nuclear weapons in order to exist.
Yes.
And when they did that, Russia invades. And then what are we doing? We're rushing to give them arms as fast as we can.
Their citizens were forced to defend themselves
with nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, granted, we don't have Russia right next to us like they did, but the point is there. It's like we don't have a land war in our country because we're all, I mean, everyone's got,
and we don't have depending on who's in office, we both may agree or disagree at whatever time, based on what the news is telling us. But we also don't have a tyrannical government lording over us because of the fear of a fully consensus of revolt against that government and the means in order to accomplish that.
People do say that, you know, right to bear arms, to rise up against the government, a tyrannical guy. But I'm like, dude, like my uncle flew the Apache helicopter in the Persian Gulf War. He was an airman for 25 years. And if you've ever seen what those things do to people, but
I've also seen dirt farmers completely stop the most powerful military during a full invasion.
Touche.
You know, I mean, and we're talking about both the United States and the Soviet Union when we're talking about Afghanistan. I mean, think about the trillions of dollars we invested in Afghanistan, and what is this? And the Taliban still in control. So to say that some rednecks with shotguns can't do something about it, if they're bound and determined against a tyrannical government, it's totally possible.
Well, when you say it like that and you compare it to IUDs in Iraq, and then, you know, it's like, so imagine.
I'm by no means saying, hey, let's rise up against the government. That is not what I'm saying.
No,
I love America. I love the Constitution. I worked for both President Bush and President Obama. I worked for President Biden. I've met the man multiple times. I don't think it's the man who's in office is the problem. I think it's the system in general which is causing the division in us as Americans. And it's awful. And what they're doing by dividing us is profiting off of us. And I think that's the biggest problem. And it's a plague and a cancer on both sides politically.
Sure. I mean, obviously the money in politics is what's.
Well, my
what
problem is political service. It was supposed to be a public service, and now it's a career.
Well, and that's why they pay people, like the legislators in North Carolina only make $14,000 a year, and they get a $109 stipend for every day they have to travel to the Capitol. But when they come out,
but when we're talking about like our federal government,
yeah, no, senators are 85,000 or 140,000, and then they come out multimillionaires because they're allowed to get legally bribed. But again, that's a whole legal bribes, lobbying. It's just it's what's screwed up everything.
Yeah, but let's not even get into the insider trading that's happening as well, and everything else.
Some of our North Carolina legislators, when they got the intel on the pandemic, they were dumping their stock and buying stuff in video conference call shit because they knew that was coming. Dude, I don't have that knowledge. I've got my money in the stock market, but I didn't have that knowledge.
Right.
And then they get a slap on the wrist. Oh, but anyway,
we're going down another rabbit hole.
Yeah, we're going down another rabbit hole. But let me ask you this, like, is there any kind of thing that can be done in your mind other than, families have to figure it out. We have to lift people out socioeconomically. Like when people are poor, they're desperate. All this, like, is there anything that can be done, even though we've got all these laws on the books already for firearms? Is there something you see that you go, and the other thing is I wanted to touch on just quickly is like when you see the photos of these guys that commit these mass murders, especially the guy that shot Gabby Gifford, you look at this guy, I can't believe somebody sold him a firearm. So can you look at all the photos of these nuts that go nuts? They all have that look. And you're like, how did you not see that when you were selling this kid these firearms that, he's a little off? Yeah. Is the sale, to some of these because, no one ever goes to the firearms places and go, hey, why did you sell it? It's like, well, is it the sale? I mean, what, an AR-15 is what, $1,200 without,
give or take. Yeah.
Give or take. Like, is it the sale? It's like, oh man,
think about this. If I'm a small business owner.
Sure.
Right? And I've turned people away. I've asked people to leave my store multiple times, and I'm very concerned. I live in Texas. You're talking about Chicago. A big fear of mine, especially because of the work that I used to do, is the cartels. I mean, cartels force people via coercion, threats, violence, and everything else to buy guns for them legally, and then they get them shipped down to Mexico. That's a huge problem, right?
Yeah.
And I'm fearful of that every single day in my store. But there are a lot of stores here that, they open up a gun store. They might not have as successful of a business model. They need to make every single sale that comes in here, just like any other sales job, right? Someone that walks in that doesn't spend money is costing you money.
Yeah.
So they see someone that can legally purchase a gun. It is that individual's constitutional right to purchase that gun. So they're
and then of course you make more money on accessories. So if you can get all the tricks, the flashlights that go on them, the mount on them.
For everybody, it's about making a dollar,
right?
But how do you stop that? You can't. Everybody has a different sense of morality. Making guns more expensive isn't the issue, because in the case of Uvalde, those were. The rifle alone that was used was over $2,000. Where did an 18-year-old kid get that kind of money?
Where did he get $2,000?
He also had a new truck and all sorts of other things. So that raises, and I don't want to get into conspiracy theories and things like that, but that raises questions in my analytical mind. It also raises questions, and maybe I will get a little bit of conspiracy theory on this one, that the Border Patrol made a huge hit against the cartels in the town of Uvalde very recently prior to that. And then shortly thereafter, that kid gets a new truck, two $2,000 guns, tons of ammunition, and very expensive optics on those very expensive accessories. And an 18-year-old kid that works part-time at a fast food joint.
Yeah, Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I haven't read any of that, so that's the
I'm
first
not
time
saying
hearing any of
that is what's happening, but I will say that the cartels do send kids into, say, the army to get training, and then they bring them back to Mexico to spread that knowledge, and that's happening daily.
So circling back, you know, is there anything that can be done? Like in your mind, with all your training, all your background, with what you do for a living, is there anything that can be done? I know they talk about, you know, training teachers and stuff, and I just don't think, like, some of them, like, it's kind of like the keys in the car. If you sound an alarm that's an active shooter, and you got a teacher that's fumbling trying to find the firearm and is nervous and has not been in a situation, it's one thing to train. Like, my mother got her concealed carry, but but she had one day of training and she hasn't fired.
So that's the problem right there. To get a concealed carry license, that is just a exam you have to pass to remove liability from the state. Because now the state can say they met these requirements that we determined to be effective, so now they are licensed. It's just like getting your driver's license. How many bad drivers do you know? Like awful drivers.
Oh yeah, totally,
right?
Totally.
You know? So there's no way that we can prevent bad things or bad people from doing bad things, right?
Sure.
The only thing that we can do is increase our preparedness. As individuals and as communities, we have to increase our preparedness. We have to be our own first responder. And I'm not just talking about having guns and being ninjas and everything else like that. I carry emergency first aid on my person at all times. I keep it within arm's reach of me. Not because I'm expecting to get into a gunfight, but because as I'm driving down the road, I live in rural Texas, I may see a single car accident and an individual may be bleeding out, and I could assist them, right? It's our inherent responsibility as citizens to help one another. That's why the name of our company is Minuteman Ordnance Company. It's not because we want a revolution. It's because of the founding of the colonies of America. There were these Minutemen who, in a moment's notice, would help their community. And that's what it's about. It's not just about revolution and fighting the redcoats. It's about serving your community and taking pride and ownership in your community, which has left us. Sean Evangelista, he owns a company called 30 Seconds Out. I'm actually wearing his t-shirt right now. He's a former Navy SEAL, amazing man. He talks about no one is coming. You know, in that worst moment of your life, no one's coming to save you. You have to expect self-rescue. And it doesn't mean just giving every teacher a gun, right? And expecting that gunfight at the OK Corral. What it means is changing everyone's mindset of not being a prey, not being
which goes back to these drills that these kids are doing. They're just hiding underneath their desk, and then someone comes in. It's like the teacher said,
those are feel good things. It's just like in the 50s when you had kids hiding under their desk for the atomic bomb stuff.
Not going to stop the atomic bomb from blowing up the school if it lands. Yeah.
No. You know, it's funny. I worked in a facility. Its main role was to preserve the life of certain individuals, and those people would go and rescue them and send them away. And in the facility that we worked in, I looked at the blueprints, and there was this big fallout shelter. And then I went to where that fallout shelter was, and I opened the door, and it was just dirt there because they never finished it, because they knew in reality, if a nuke hit there, you're done, no matter if you're in a shelter or not. So,
yeah. So to me, it would be like if it almost seems like there should be a separate alarm. Like someone can pull an alarm for a fire, there should be a separate one to pull for an active shooter. Yeah. As soon as that shit goes off, every kid ought to get the hell out of the building. I mean, I don't care if they're cracking windows and they're jumping through.
You've got a problem there. And what if somebody's waiting outside to ambush those kids? That's the problem. I mean, remember, there were two individuals. I think training does need to occur, and it does need to be taken seriously. SROs do need to take their jobs very seriously.
But they can't. But the kids can't just corral in one spot and be sitting ducks for someone to just come in. I mean, when you hear that the kids had to be identified by parents' DNA because their heads were exploded and there was no way to patch them up to put them in the coffins. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, you've seen war, but can you imagine an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old just seeing that? I mean,
unfortunately, I've seen children killed, badly hurt, and everything else like that. That's the disgusting side of war. However, defending a classroom is much easier than defending a campus, right?
Okay.
I think it comes down to teachers. A good friend of mine we were Marines together. He's now a teacher, and he's like, it's not my job to take up arms and fight crime, so to speak. And I said, well, if someone came in to your classroom and tried to hurt one of your kids, what would you do? He said, I do everything possible to protect those kids. I said, okay, so then it is your job. It is your responsibility to do that, to be that Minuteman. In that moment, you have to do what's right and protect those kids.
But that particular teacher, that particular example is a former Marine. And so like when you have women or older gentlemen, like the guy who was the school teacher in the video today, talking about, I mean, he couldn't stop an AR-15 at point blank range. Like, who can?
There was a little lady in New York or wherever it was up in the Northeast that just did that. A guy brought an AR-15 to shoot up a graduation party, and a little tiny lady shot him dead.
I missed that story. I'll have to, I'm sure you're right. I just I didn't see that story. Cause like every other day there's a shooting. It's just like, it's just never ending. It's
the way it is.
It's, again, I'll try one more time. Is there anything other than training and protecting yourself and these, apart from arming teachers and all this other kind of stuff, is there anything, any law, anything that can be, or is it all just fluff that, because you hear the thing where, like, when they repealed in 2004, when they repealed the assault weapons ban, then, the shit went up 300%, and prior to that, and it's funny because it's like when Reagan got shot and Brady got shot, and he was put in a wheelchair and it's like, they only seem to do shit when it affects them. Like they don't seem to want to pass anything for anyone else unless somebody is close to them gets affected. Yeah. It's like, one of the politicians up in New York, his grandmother was one of them that got killed in the grocery store. And she was like 82, and so of course he's like, I am in a position where I can do stuff and say stuff. And is it going to take, somebody in a school who's a bigwig up there somewhere that their kid gets killed for them to go, oh, now I got to do something. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. I feel like something has to happen. I don't know what that is, which is why I have you here. I don't know if anyone else has the solution. It's just maddening. It's just,
I don't know if there isn't.
I got a 2.5-year-old, and I'm just so scared to death. She goes to preschool, and I'm just so scared to death to send her to school.
Well, think about this. Think about that frontier family in the 1870s in Kansas, who was so afraid of Comanches or raiders coming in and taking their children.
Sure.
Nothing has changed.
Right.
Now, the only thing that has changed is our ability to see it happening that's not right around us, right? Where we can, there's always been evil in this world.
Sure.
It's
always like, I've said that before to people. I said, there's, I wouldn't have known about the 16-car pileup in Arkansas if I was just reading my regular newspaper that only covered local stuff in North Carolina, because I wouldn't be aware of that. But because of the 24-hour news cycle and everybody, and that's something that Matthew McConaughey talked about today, not to bring him up again, but he said, like, the media, they just
eat it up, right? Because it's ratings for them. Again, it comes down to that almighty dollar, right? The more that they can talk about these and sensationalize these things, the more money they can get. I get CNN and Fox News and Al Jazeera and all. I subscribe to all of them, and I get the little notifications on my phone, and they'll just give me these little teaser headlines, right? So you've got to click in and read it, because that's how they get their ad rates.
Sure.
They could have just said, hey, this individual, name, date, died. They say celebrity from the show that you loved as a kid, they died. And then you've got to click on it and find out who it was and why it happened and everything else like that. It's all about getting that money. And so that they're going to continue. And that's part of the problem, is that media, social media, has over sensationalized everything. And that may, again, I'm not a psychologist, but if I was a kid that had a problem, it's like the kid with bangs, so to speak, look how famous this individual is. He's now
right, like the kid that killed the people in the grocery store. He live streamed it on Twitch, and they were able to pull that down, but not before everyone saw. I had a conversation with my brother, and he watched it. I can't. My stomach, it would haunt me. I wouldn't be able to sleep, seeing that kind of stuff.
And that's terrorism 101. I mean, when I was a kid, one of the determining factors for me to want to join the Marine Corps is when I was in school and I watched Daniel Pearl get beheaded.
Oh, I remember seeing that. Dude, I could close my eyes and see it right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was like 16, and I watched that at school.
Yeah. And did you remember seeing the one? I mean, I hate to go down this road, but the one where the guy had left to go join and he was he was a soldier that was kidnapped, and they literally cut his head off on. I mean, I remember seeing that. Just
people in this world. And we're not going to stop. It's never not going to happen. That's why I preach preparedness. That's why I teach how I teach. And that's why I provide tools and education to the people in my community, because unfortunately there is no fixing it. There's always going to be bad people in this world, and we can have as many laws as we can fit onto paper. There's still going to be bad people in this world.
And I think
in Africa right now, where there's no guns allowed, that they're just getting macheted to death.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. Yeah. So, anything to at least reduce it. I mean, even politicians were saying today and some of the things that we're never going to get rid of all of it. Well, obviously, but is there a way to bring it down? Is there a way to, instead of 45,000 people being killed by handguns or firearms per year, can we get it to 25? Like, what's it going to get it to 25? Is that just lifting people up out of poverty? Is that having parents, not work two jobs?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things. And I think over the course of this talk, we've kind of hit on it. I mean, number one, it starts with let's try to revamp our police forces and get them to where they're capable of dealing with the skyrocketing crime rates again. I think it comes to better educating individuals about firearms. I think there's still a general misconception of what guns even are.
Would that be requiring more training? Like I know when you were a Marine, I saw this guy who was a Marine, like firearms instructor or something. He went viral the other day on TikTok. Did you see this guy that went viral? And he said, well, when you have to qualify, it's like 2 weeks, like 1 week of,
that's a really great point. You spend 1 week in the Marine Corps, you spend an entire week. That is your appointed place of duty. You spend it usually it's like in a softball field or something like that, with your rifle or pistol, and you're practicing with it without firing a single shot.
Right. And then the second week,
live fire.
Right. So you actually have 2 weeks per year. You have to qualify with that firearm.
Yes.
And
on top of any other training that you're doing with that firearm as well, depending on your job title.
And some people will get one concealed carry class, and then it's the OK Corral. It's like,
that's the problem. And no state determines that the concealed carry class is a firearms instructional class. It's instructing you on the laws of that state, where you can and cannot carry, and what you can and cannot carry.
So my mother had to hit a target. Like she had to
There's a very rudimentary qualification.
Okay. And so
in most states, a blind person can pass.
Could they, I mean, would it behoove the world to get people to, I mean, what about, I mean, I know this is out there because it's school systems, but they used to have rifle shit in school, like where they would treat people.
You know what's crazy is there are more gun laws now than there were in the 1960s.
Yeah.
Way more. Back in the 1960s, I mean, even there were more gun laws than when we were kids, right? With the Brady laws, I mean, just the assault weapons ban was dropped, not the entire Brady laws. I mean, those are still in effect.
Okay.
In the 1960s, you can go into a Sears catalog as a 13-year-old and mail order a gun to your house.
Wow.
But there were no school shootings. In fact, they were so statistically low at that point in time that they didn't even compute them. Someone went back. He's a detective in a law enforcement agency, and he went through and looked up mass shootings in the 1960s. There would be spans of 5 from the 50s to the 80s. There would be spans of 5 to 4 years where there'd be no mass shootings in the United States recordable.
Well,
and now there's 12 to 15 a year.
But then, well, according to we're at 255.
Yeah, if you include gang violence, which is a whole nother thing.
And you know, when you look at the guy in the clock tower in Texas, they said, I saw a thing that went around the other day that, you know, it took him 3 hours to kill 11 people from the clock tower because he had a rifle and he was shooting people and they couldn't get up to him and all that kind of stuff. And then, you know, you got another guy that walks in and in 40 seconds kills 19 people. And because, you know, his rifle didn't have all
I think that has less to do with the rifle and more to do with the density. Right. He was in a clock tower. That is precision shooting. It's not easy.
Okay.
When you're in a classroom, again, he could have just
when you're in a classroom and everyone's corralled,
a Molotov cocktail in there and had the same effect.
Okay. Right? Yeah.
One Molotov cocktail.
Good point. Good point. You know, again, I agree because I go back to what this school teacher said today on Good Morning America about all the kids were just under the desks pretending to be asleep. And I'm like, why would you? It's because they want you to pretend you're already dead. But if he walked in and he hadn't shot you yet, he knows you're not dead. You're just laying there with your eyes closed. So it's just it's a horrible, I mean, oh my God, I can't even think about it. Mm-hmm. So maybe a requirement, maybe a requirement of more training for people? I don't know.
I think more training in general, both mandatory training for government buildings such as schools, should definitely be in place. And then, you know, it should be encouraged in communities for individuals. Individuals should seek out training, right? That's why, you know, my company, every Sunday, we offer free defensive pistol classes for everybody. There's no cap on it, and we offer it for free, and we're out there all afternoon training people at the range. And we do that for free because it's something that we believe in, that everybody should be able to get the access to quality training and have a better understanding of their firearms, because that's the problem. Someone will take their, you know, concealed handgun class and have this really false sense of security, because it's just like what we talked about earlier, where they can't get their keys in the car, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Being able to utilize a weapon and potentially take someone else's life that's a lot happening.
And I always feel like, you know, shotguns always seem to be the better home defense in a house thing. I mean, I don't know. I mean, because I feel like if you are that unsteady, if you're just clearing a hallway, I mean, you know, just that's your best bet versus a handgun where you may not be accurate in the dark if someone broke into your house.
So what I teach is what you should use to protect your home is the firearm that you're most proficient with. A lot of people cop out with shotguns, but shotguns are actually inherently very complicated with a pump action and how it's loaded and all the mechanisms that's involved with the shotgun. And then again, what I like to teach is, you know, we're responsible for everything that comes out of that barrel, right? And I like to teach proficiency. And if you want to it's not like in the movie, Sean, where you can just fire a shotgun and blow the guy to smithereens. That's not really how it works. I mean, at short ranges, the pattern of a shotgun is smaller than the size of a fist. So it's still very easy to miss.
Well, what about as far as home defense goes? You know, when people say they need an AR-15 for home defense, I mean, you know, the round will go through 5 walls, won't it? I mean, you know, but so will a 40 caliber Glock, right? That'll go through a wall. And so it's kind of like, you know, I mean, the whole thing is just, the thing is, I don't think, and it'll be interesting to see, because, you know, you keep hearing that these senators, there's only like 4 of them in a room, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and we're going to come out and have a bill. And you keep hearing this, and I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think they're going to come out with anything on this because we're too close to the midterms. I think they're going to make this a political issue. Nobody wants to have anything signed before the midterms and show unity. I mean, because that wouldn't work. So my thinking is, you know, it's, you know, we're still going to be talking about this, you know, 50 years from now. I don't know. I mean, and anything I think that they do propose, like we've discussed tonight, it all just seems like it's not going to work.
It's just lip service.
Seems like
it's an election year. The reason why we're talking about, I mean, we both mentioned it. I mean, gun violence is not a new thing. It just didn't just pop up. It happens every single year, right. But it's the hot button right now because everybody's trying to get reelected or, you know, overthrow who's in office and everything else like that.
Yeah. I mean, if they wanted to do something, they could have done it when Sandy Hook happened. I mean, come on.
What's disgusting is they're taking advantage of these poor little children's lives by propping their own elections up off of them.
Yeah.
That's what's awful. And both sides are doing it. Yeah. So no one's innocent in political office right now. And there needs to be some accountability there. Comes down to accountability in our elected officials and the responsibilities of individual citizens. That's the only way we're going to fix it.
Well, I guess we'll wrap it up. What I'd like to do is revisit this if something passes.
Yeah.
To see, you know, well, is this going to work? Is that bullshit? Is this bullshit? Yeah. You know, and I always feel like, you know, a lot of it is going to be follow the money. Once something does get passed, if they do allocate $10 billion for, you know, infrastructure to be upgraded and cameras in schools so they can see somebody coming sooner, or locks on doors that'll automatically lock if you pull a lever, like maybe those are the things that do, you know, will be successful. I don't know. I mean, replacing all the glass in a school with bulletproof glass. Is that right? I mean, metal detectors. I mean, I don't know. Like, even if somebody walks through a metal detector through the front door, like, you know, they're already in the building. If they walk through the metal detector, they're already in the building. It's just,
so that school was actually very secured. Someone left a door open.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even if you spend all this money, if people are complacent and don't care, or it'll never happen here. That's the story.
Well, and I think that's what think it's just never going to happen to me. And then you know,
until it does. Until you know, another thing I like to say is hope is not a good plan. You know,
that's good.
You know, there's that old saying, you know, prepare for the worst, hope for the best type of thing. Every day you should have a contingency. What if there's a tornado? What's the plan? What if, you know, there's I mean, it happened on I-95 when in Virginia when everybody got snowed in for 17 hours.
Yeah, there was no plan for that. No one knew what to do.
What do you do if you're stuck in your car for 24 hours in extreme weather? What's your plan? It's not just what do I do if I have to get into a gunfight. It's what do I do if the worst possible thing could happen to me at any moment. That doesn't mean you have to be a crazy prepper and have, you know, 7,000 pounds of macaroni in your basement.
Right.
But you need to have that mindset. I mean, it happened to me in 2017 during I lived in Hawaii at the time when they had the ballistic missiles crisis. And
I remember that. Yeah.
I was there. I got the notification on my phone. I was at the gym working out, and that happened. And I was right next to Pearl Harbor. And I know that in every briefing that I was ever in dealing with nukes, major military infrastructure like 7th Fleet is going to be what they're going to nuke. So what's my plan? And I had to figure that out really quickly because you only have so many minutes before that's going to happen.
But, you know, like you said, they never finished the bunker. I mean,
Exactly.
It's just, it is what it is. Well, look, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I like having the discussion and without the right and the left. Like there's gotta be middle ground when we have discussions so we can debate. Oh, I say something and I say, oh no, but think about this. Oh, okay, yeah, no, you're right about that. And then vice versa. It's
less thought happening and more argument happening, and that's never a good thing.
Yeah. I just have to hope that we did this thing proper when I hit end and that we have this thing. So, but thanks for coming on, and I really appreciate
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. And invites, if you ever want to come out and see exactly what we're doing as a company, you're 100% invited anytime. If you want to
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. You have a good night. And
you too, Sean. Thank you so much.
Thank you.